Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Crypto Hipsters Podcast, where I interview founders and co founders, entrepreneurs and artists, executives and stay at home hipsters in crypto and blockchain around the world. And I have an amazing podcast for you today. Let's get to it. And today I have an amazing guest. His name is QuHarrison Terry. He's the co-author of a recent book called the NFT Handbook. QuHarrison, welcome.
Oh, what's up? What's up? How have you been?
Great. I'm glad that you're here today. So let's kick things off. The first question I always ask my guests is what is your background, and is it a logical background to what you do now?
Come on. There's no logical background to anything, really. Like I think that's one of the biggest constructs that I think is overrated, right? That you start something and then there's just this linear progression that gets you to your destination. So to answer your question, for me, it's definitely not linear. It's all over the place. Sometimes I went left to get to right, and sometimes you go right to go left. And eventually you keep going up and up and up. And I think that's like the whole concept of just staying motivated and staying into it. But I'm QuHarrison Terry. I'm the author of the NFT Handbook, an entrepreneur, and also, I guess I would say a venture capitalist too in some capacity.
Right. I saw that you've done some work with Mark Cuban, right? What is that like?
Yeah, working at Mark Cuban companies. It's been a blessing, right? Like I get a chance to work with founders of all types, companies of all sizes, everything from what you see on Shark Tank to investments that Mark has just made himself. And working with Mark is been one of those experiences where you learn a ton about communication. And Mark's a master communicator. I appreciate him for that. And it's like one of those things where it's eye opening because I get a chance to just be on the ship and in that, you get a chance to see how things are done. So it's the first time too for me, who's always been kind of the guy that's ideating and coming up with the idea or seeing the future and running towards that, to be on the other side and saying like, okay, how do we invest or how do we help a company that's on the other side grow? And what's the relationship between a investor and a founder? And it's different just being on one side, but now being on both sides, it definitely changes my perspective a bit.
Great. And what would you say is the biggest difference between the founder and the investor?
So the founder is usually thinking about it from the whole concept of, I would say, like two capacities, right? It's either like if you're a really early stage founder, you're like, how do I get rich, right? You're like, this is my lottery ticket out of this. Like, I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna control and own my own destiny. And then the second thing is usually you have like this crazy vision, right? Like let's say you've already made money or you're just beyond your, let's say you're post economic, it doesn't matter. Like you're just at this point where you're not worried about cash per se. Then it's about bringing this vision to life. And that's, I think, where you see that visionary founder. You have like the operations and the executors, and you have like the true visionaries, the people that I think we all look to. I mean, Elon Musk is probably one that's seen around the world. I would say I would put Kanye in that bucket, right? Where you have these people that have these like very esoteric or peculiar ways of looking at the world or just things that we should do within the world. And they go out and they accomplish these things to like really no true avail. But then momentarily we all kind of get on to their vision and we're like, oh, so this is why you put the hyperloop out there, or oh, this is why you think Mars is somewhere we should inhabit. And like it might take you a while to actually see what they see, but they're thinking 10-15 years ahead. And I don't think that that's true for all founders. That's why I separate it. On the investor side, it's more of like, are you investing because it's fun, right? Like there's a lot of investors that do this because it's a great passive time, right? Like they get a chance to meet and grow their network, see what's out there, invest in a lot of different companies, and just kind of get off on the nuances that are associated there. But then also there's investors that like do impact investing, right? And like they look at, if I add my resources here, I take my knowledge, my skill set, my network, and I apply it to this category right here, which is overlooked. we can create a ton of value, and that value will unlock potential in ways that we haven't seen. So in many capacities, they both are doing the same thing. It's just how you do it is a lot different. Whereas the founder is going to be, 100% a practitioner focused on bringing an idea to life. The investor is more so saying like, hey, how can I have a massive impact in this space? And I mean, I definitely oversimplified it a lot, but that's the greatest, like, highest level difference I see. I mean, happy to go deeper, but I know we're on your podcast.
Thank you very much for that. That's very helpful. That's been helpful to me. Now I know I'm the investor.
Okay.
So so I wanted to talk about your book and dive into that, right?
Sure, for sure.
So there's a lot of talk of what NFTs are, non-fungible tokens. Most people have heard it, most people haven't heard, though, what are like some of the key aspects and the extrinsic elements of NFTs. And I know you go into that in your book. So could you talk about, basically what NFTs are to you, and then talk about those aspects and elements?
So NFTs to me are a technological revolution that I think very few of us truly understand, right? And what I mean by that is it's beyond just an image. It's beyond just a profile picture. An NFT is a smart contract, and we've seen what smart contracts can do kind of just in cryptocurrencies in general. I mean, this is the corner. I'm sure you've seen some fascinating smart contracts where you're like, wow, like DeFi, I didn't know you could do that with that. And what NFTs represent to me is the first time where digital scarcity can be had and enforced, right? And my background here is I started one of the first digital art marketplaces back in 2015. It was called 23 Vivi. And I was maybe a little too early, right? But I've been thinking about NFTs and how to buy, sell, create, how to exchange them, how to grow them since literally since 2015, probably 2014, because we started in 20. So I was just kind of dabbling in this space and went deep a long time ago. And the NFT thing, what's changed between now and then is NFTs are the way that we now understand and rally around these digital files that are scarce. And what's fascinating to me about that is, one, you have the intrinsic properties here, like they're much like diamonds, right? Like a diamond has value, not only because it has, ideally a special meaning to the a holder, right? Like someone gifted you this diamond, it's a memorable cause, occasion, event, or it is like special because of the properties that are associated with that diamond. So you have the cut, clarity, and color, right? I can't, even if I made a diamond that looked vaguely similar, it's not going to have the same cut. It's not going to have the same clarity. It's not going to have the same color. So diamonds, we already understand as NFTs. I mean, there's man-made diamonds. There's what do you call it? There's like actual regular diamonds that are just naturally grown and all that good stuff. And there's this whole concept where it's like we can point to real world examples like I just did and say, oh, the same economics of NFTs that we're seeing happen with like CryptoPunks or a Bored Ape Yacht Club, that's happening in the real world. And so it is almost like, what was old now becomes new, but the conditions associated with it are just mind blowing. I can't program on top of my diamond any type of layer, right? I can't, like, it maybe you could take it to a pawn shop and get some money against it and then maybe go back and try to buy it back later, right? Like you could do that. But in a smart contract, if you wanted me to build some a lending mechanism, you could totally go ahead and do that. And that optionality is available to us all. It's not limited to just a big corporation. And so we wrote the NFT handbook with the idea in mind that, like, hey, there's a lot of technical people out here that understand solidity and what's going on in the blockchain. But even if you look at all the wallets in totality, maybe there's 300,000 to 400,000 people that are participating right now as we're speaking. It was less when we were writing the book. And, Ethereum was surging, but it wasn't surging like what it is doing right now. And Bitcoin wasn't surging like what it was doing now when we were writing this book. And I think that the concept is, because those prices are skyrocketing, there's very few resources where people can kind of come and say, hey, what is actually this NFT revolution? how do I get a part of it? And, you know, where are the people giving me information where they're not trying to shill anything, right? Like neither Matt or myself are trying to shill any type of project. We just wrote the book. I think we're if we're shilling anything, it's the information in the book. And, you know, we wrote the book with Wiley because Wiley gave us like 2 or 3 technical editors and or I guess not one technical editor, a few other editors, right? Where we couldn't just write anything, right? There was a whole point where we were going back and forth and they were giving us pushback and they were asking deep questions. And, you know, I love that because we got out a product that I think is truly one of the most concise and easiest to read, uh I guess not pamphlets, but books or handbooks on the topic. And if you know nothing, you'll at least walk away knowing something. Now, if you're the most technical programmer on the Solidity front and you're looking at like what's next in NFTs, this is not the book for you. If you are asking yourself, what the hell is an NFT? This is the book for you, right? And you can pick it up, you can go through it. It's not 400 pages, it's only like 200 and some change. And there's different chapters. You can jump around however you want. So if you already know like what an NFT and why they have value, figure out how to market and buy, right? And that might be helpful to you. So I know I'm going on and on, but you know, this book is one of those things where I get really excited about it because I think it really can have true value and add some great things to the world.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask more questions about the book, like right now. So let's talk about some of them that hit the real world, right? There are problems out there. I don't know what they are, but you deal with traditional collectibles and traditional, artwork. What are the advantages of NFTs that they bring to this traditional problem world?
So some of the advantages that NFTs have over just your traditional assets or collectibles is most traditional collectibles are non-bankable assets, right? In the sense that you can't take them easily to a bank and become liquid, or like so they're essentially illiquid. You have to go through a long series of processes in order to get cash out. And NFTs have kind of solved that in a way that I think none of us really expected. Like as long as there's a community for the project that you're collecting, there usually is some type of liquidity. Now, is that liquidity going to be close to the floor of the project? That's not always true, but that availability and just access to liquid capital off of a collectible, I don't think we've really ever seen that before. And there's many other ideas, but you know, I know it's a conversation, so I'll I'll go. I don't want to take over all the time.
Fine. So I want to talk about marketplaces. As far as collectibles, I have a baseball. I have a Roy Halladay baseball, a no hitter in the playoffs. But I don't have that little certificate, that paper certificate that says that it's authentic, right?
Right, right, right.
So how do we create marketplaces that you have that certificate of authenticity on the blockchain? And how can like somebody who does collectibles get involved in that marketplace?
Well, there's a couple things. I think if you are doing collectibles, there's a lot of marketplaces out there. I would say, one, go check out the NFT Handbook. We list quite a few of the actual marketplaces. There's a whole chapter on that in the book. The marketplace that I think we're most familiar with is OpenSea. And what I like about OpenSea is it allows you to mint directly on their site, or if you have a project and you want to list your NFT, you can also do that too. So they're agnostic as far as where the NFT originates. It's just that it needs to be on a blockchain of sorts. And once your project's on the blockchain, you really have the ability to play on any of these marketplaces. That's the cool thing because the blockchain is open source, it's decentralized, and so if you're creating collectibles, I would think about it less from the lens of if there's a specific marketplace that you have to be on, and solely on are you on the marketplaces that matter to your prospective customers and the people you're going after. A good example of this in the same realm that you're talking about is Autograph. They're doing some stuff in the sports space. NBA Top Shot, they're doing a lot of things in the sports space as well, with the NBA, etc. And what's interesting about those platforms is they're you can view their NFTs on other marketplaces and platforms, but the user experience is very much centered around going to their websites and checking out the drop, or checking out the actual collectible there, experiencing it, participating in the mint, grabbing what you're going to grab, and then kind of playing. If there's a game to be played, you play it on the site. Axie Infinity is a similar site where, the experience is had less on the marketplace and more on the actual site. And I think as we look at the actual future of some of these digital collectibles, and just how we're thinking about NFTs in general, I think that that's going to be more of a commonality than just an early stage trend.
Got it. So one quick follow up is you said the word minting. Can you walk some of us who don't know what minting is or how to do that? Just walk us through briefly what that is.
Yeah, so minting is this process where you exactly bring your NFT to life, right? So a mint, if you think about it as if you were minting a coin, like an actual coin in real life, that's the point where that coin becomes real. When you mint something, you're putting it on the blockchain, and it is now available to everyone that is looking at the blockchain to see. Prior to that, it's not really. It might exist on your computer, it might be in a shared drive, but it's not easily for me to see that digital file on a blockchain, because it just doesn't exist. So there's a whole chapter on minting. I just simplified it a lot because I don't want to get too technical, but happy to also talk about the future of minting offline if anyone wants to reach out to me on any of the social networks and all that.
Great. And speaking of the future, your book covers the unwritten future of NFTs, right? What is
Yeah,
the unwritten? What to you is the unwritten future of the NFTs?
man, there's a lot of things, right? I think at that time when we wrote the book, uh, I would say we were really spot on, right? We didn't know what the future would be, and how early or late we would be, but we literally in the book on the metaverse, right? I'm not ruining it for anybody, but if you check out the table of contents, you'll see that the future of NFTs, the first section in there is all about the metaverse. And so we started to talk about some of the things that we're seeing just becoming true today in our everyday life, with Facebook and some of their announcements that they've made, and also some of these pushes that we're seeing big companies just move towards, where they're thinking about, what does their digital environment look like, and how do they manifest some of their corporate missions and values in ways that are just intrinsically digital. And so I look at it in kind of this construct of NFTs are like access tokens to the metaverse, but that's not the only way you can access the metaverse. It might just be one of the ways you get into the metaverse with like your special uh collection of digital goods. So we look at, games like Fortnite, and they have skins. And, for players that have been playing for a long time, they have some pretty rare and unique skins. For players that have stopped playing, they don't have the skins. And so that's a very oversimplified model of like what digital collectible economies look like inside of virtual spaces. But when we think about the future of just kind of the NFTs and like what's unwritten, I don't think there's a lot talking about the metaverse and NFTs, sort of in the capacity that we did. I think I talk about a bit on just like what the future of wallet management is, and like non-bankable assets in general. Like, how do you start to take some of these non-bankable assets that we just talked about and bring them into a platform where, they can be NFT'd, because then there's that whole concept of being able to just the tokenization of the baseball card that you own. Like, that's something that a lot of smart people are asking themselves today. And there are people building, whole economies of scale just on literally that concept there. And it's all possible now because of the world of crypto, and because of the NFTs, and just what we're seeing in DeFi and other elements. So I think that it's a very interesting time to be alive and participating in this crypto revolution. If you have a chance to go deep on NFTs, I recommend, at least spending some time with the handbook. It's well worth it if you ask me. Even if you just glance through and just check out the chapters where you feel like you could just beef up your knowledge base. There's a lot of good examples. There's a lot of call outs and projects. Like, we really took our time and tried to make something that we thought the world would find valuable.
I'm going to read your book.
Thank
I can't wait to read your book. I've done a lot of podcasts on NFTs, so I'm excited about it. So let me ask you this. You mentioned the metaverse, right? What do you see as being possible that probably doesn't maybe not exist today in the metaverse?
I think the metaverse will allow for us to really challenge our visions of travel. So to date, like if you want to experience something entirely new with a new group of people, meet and exchange kind of ideas, you largely are limited to the zip code around you. So if you live in, a weird town in Wisconsin, right? Like, and there's maybe 3,700 people in your town. In order for you to get a diverse enough perspective that isn't, just your surroundings, you might have to travel, 45 miles out of your city just to get to a city that might only have, let's say 500,000 people, which is still relatively small in the grand scheme of things, right? And to you, of course, that's a large city. It's a big town. But there are Reddit communities or subreddits that have, 5 times that many people in it sharing thoughts and moderating and going crazy. And so when you start to think about that, how that traverses to the internet in the Web 2.0 era, we saw what digital communities literally could unleash and unveil in Facebook groups and Twitter exchanges, right? Like we saw what these massive thought leader led group discussions would bring and entail. But now you're not looking at a 2D paint, right? Like you're not looking at the Black Mirror, as they proverbially say. Hey, we're looking at the realization of like whatever the world is, you get to hang out there, you get to be there, you get to go and check it out. And I think what happens is you have like a concert that can now have 30 million people. That's absurd, right? Simultaneously experiencing it at the exact same time. Like simultaneously casting or broadcasting thought, and you're able to participate at the source. That is in itself incredible. And then you look at the graphics and the resolution on a lot of these properties, like, even looking at what Facebook's doing with the Quest. I was in an experience the other day, and I'm a big fan of Japan, and they had this experience where you could go to Shibuya, and I'm very familiar with Shibuya and what the city looks like. And I put the headset on, and it's photorealistic, almost to a 1-for-1 scale. Me going through Shibuya, I can't smell it, and obviously I can't feel the temperature. But those are values that I think will probably be alleviated or changed in the next 5-10 years, I imagine. But the whole point is because you can control the vision and what people see, and you control the audio experience, and you can control kind of the communicative experience, like the communication layer that is happening here. What's possible, we haven't really even begun to explore and really unlift. I think we're still at that point where we haven't had the iPhone moment in VR, where enough people have the tools so that developers can kind of start to build and lift up the experiences. Now, I know a lot of VR headsets have been sold. There's still just a lot of nuance into getting a base level experience, right? Like there's still people accessing VR through their phone. And I don't think that that's the right component. It was cool. It introduced the concept, but now we're starting to get to the Oculus Quest, and again, it's cool, but it's a little too heavy, right? It's still not exactly there. And when we get to that point where VR becomes very, very accessible, and like it's just it's something where you can see it, I think that accelerates the metaverse. But I think in passive, I think AR is not to be slept on. I think that people are going to see some cool things happen with the devices, just because the cameras and the capabilities for the processors in the phones, it's getting to a base level where it's going to be second nature to create like these very influential AR experiences. We saw a glimpse of what that could look like when Niantic created Pokemon Go, but even that was like 5 years ago. What the next version of that, the next evolution of that, will be even more mind blowing, which is scary to think about, because Pokemon Go really captured and captivated the world at a time where you probably didn't think that it could get much cooler, right? You're like, oh wow, I can visit this virtual world on my phone. I think that like developers have been working on some things that are gonna make that feel like 2017. I also think like when we think about the metaverse and how we continue to contribute, I think what we'll be able to do is, if you identify a certain way or you have certain values, similarly to how Web 2.0 allowed you to kind of get an algorithm that helped people think like how you think, and it just showed you that. So it kind of created this bias. I think you'll have algorithmic bias, but it won't be truly programmed. I think it will be more so you're going to go hang with the people you want to hang with. And if those people happen to be on, in Decentraland on a certain plot, well, that's just going to be your territory. And so I think it'll become territorial just like the real world, except for you won't have necessarily the nation state uh, borders and dividers that you have in like the real world. So I think that everything that we have will just become bigger. And you take away that travel element, you're gonna see ideas that you just would have never found because not everybody can make it to New York. A kid from Ohio or Wisconsin might have a really great idea, but there's no way for them to truly commit that idea to society because they are limited by capital access or just perspective. And so this will solve that.
Great. It sounds exciting to me. And I was going to be my last question, but you said two words, and now it can't be the last question. I have one more question.
But
Um, you said the word nation state, right?
yeah,
And there's a chapter in your book talking about the legal parts of NFTs, right? And you see recently a lot of I would say FUD, but a lot of articles or conversations about SEC attack vectors against DeFi,
uh,
against stable coins, right? So what are the attack vectors toward NFTs, and if they're not secured securities, is that a safe path for investors going forward?
Matt Fortnow is actually my co-author, and he's an attorney, and he wrote a wonderful chapter on this in the book. I can talk to it to some degree, but I really do think you should read what Matt wrote because it's super compelling, and it's coming from an attorney. Obviously, it's not legal advice, but that perspective of a lawyer is still ultimately very valuable in shaping how you think and come to some of these ideas and concepts. But to answer your question, are NFT securities? I don't believe so, not in their traditional state, right? I think that, they're one for one assets, like diamonds are diamond securities, right? Like I don't think anyone would say they are. The companies behind diamonds can issue securities, right? So a company can issue securities, but I don't think the art itself or the product itself is a security. I think when you modify the product, or when you start to create this impetus that, if I buy this, you're gonna make money back, you start to definitely knock on the SEC and a lot of federal regulators' doors, you start to challenge some of the things that we've known to be true. There's nothing wrong with that, but just as the saying goes, don't wake up a bear that's hibernating. Uh, it's a little bit of that, unfortunately, just going on in crypto, and I think there's a lot of perspectives to be had. Uh, I tend to think that the regulators in the current state, at least in the US, they don't fully understand a lot of this stuff. So they're making decisions with a misinformed bias. I also think they've never really participated in any of it. So I think to my earlier point, talking about investors and entrepreneurs, I think the regulators are more on like this investor side. But the difference is most investors have, started a company or they've been a part of a company in some capacity where they kind of know what it's like, right? So they know, why the visionary founder versus like, the impractical founder, right? Like they know all these different archetypes because they've kind of lived it or they've been around the block long enough to see it. I think the regulators know how to regulate, government, and I think the government really once controlled money, right? I think that now you have um, with cryptocurrencies and DeFi some really strong case studies as to what a non-government controlled body of financial uh, tools, assets, and institutions could look like. And obviously, if you felt threatened by some small like case study, you probably would get a little bit more uh I would say less lenient. You would become less lenient on that regulatory hurdle because you would see it more as a nuisance. It'd be like a mosquito. You're like, no, like the way we have it is great. And like the mosquito just keeps flying in your face. And you're like, I don't like this mosquito. You keep trying to crush it and crush it, but it's outsmarting you. And so I think right now to these nation states, crypto is like this mosquito and they don't really know what to do with it. It stings them, but they're still able to do whatever they're doing because the numbers are insignificant or inconsequential to what like they ultimately control. But they also see this mosquito every time it bites, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they don't know what to do with it. So I think we're also annoyed because we're like, yo, stop trying to crush it, stop trying to crush it, stop trying to crush us. And I think it's books like these, like the NFT Handbook, right? Like ideally, not enough changes in 2 months where everything in the book becomes outdated. But if there are easier pathways and inroads to learn about what's going on, maybe that can form a short-term perspective. So that way you at least know the fundamental basis of what you're talking about. And then you can go to ask questions about the things you don't know or that you don't fully understand. So I think we all just have to communicate a little bit better. And if we were able to do that, maybe we'll be able to find a common space where this stuff coexists alongside, the fiat currencies. I don't think it should be one or the other. I love the idea of optionality.
So do I. So I want to thank you very much for your time today. It's been an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed your insights. I have one last question, and that's this. How can people find out more information about you? How can they can they buy your new book? Well, how can
Yeah.
they do that?
So to find out more information about me, you can go online and type at QuHarrison. That's literally my handle on all the social channels. So if you want to talk to me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I don't know, some new platform, I'm probably on it. Just mention me at QuHarrison. You can also go to my website, which is QuHarrison.com. Beyond that, to get the book, you can find it on Amazon, which is probably the largest retailer that has the book. But if you're not on Amazon, the book is actually available most places where books are sold. So you might find it in the airport, you might find it at Barnes and Noble. I don't know what you have in New Zealand actually. So uh, I gotta get up to speed. I haven't been out there to see where the book is exactly, but it's definitely available online. And if you need any trouble or I mean, if you have any trouble trying to find the book, again, just message me and I can probably find a way for you to get it.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Likewise.